Gene, since you were in the lion's den at the same time, what do you think of Larry Summers' op-ed arguing that if this package is this big, it could do more harm to the economy than good?
Well, on this issue, I strongly disagree with Larry, and I actually think that what he said is inconsistent with a lot of his recent writing that's made the case for going big fiscally and not worrying as much about somewhat higher deficits when interest rates are so historically low. But let me put in more real terms why the risks are, why I think Larry is wrong. It's not just, I mean, it's partly what the president said so eloquently, that this is about people's lives. It's about long-term employment. It's about evictions. It's about real suffering. But it also is about risk. And what we learned from 2009, and I think we've learned from the past, is you have to have enough firepower, not just to encourage recovery, but to get all the way to full employment. That number two, you have to take into account that things could be even worse than you think. Look at today's job numbers. That suggests the unemployment rates we're hearing are wrong, that there is much more pain. We're still 9.9 million jobs behind. We have over 4 million people have dropped out of the labor force. And three, finally, there's the risk that things don't go perfectly. We could have troubles with variants of COVID, that all sorts of things. And when you're in this type of deep hole, you do not take a risk of getting stuck in the hole. You put all the firepower you can. So, on this one, I strongly agree with the president and strongly disagree with my former colleague, Larry Summers.
So there's also this, Larry Summers in the op-ed, Ben, does say that he made the mistake of not going big enough back when the Obama administration faced the massive recession and the housing crisis. Talk to me now about the pushback that we are seeing from this White House on somebody who was a big part of the economic strategy the last time Joe Biden was in office.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, and thank you for having me, and great to be on with Gene, who was in the White House with Larry during that period where the stimulus wound up being around $800 billion, and he and others have acknowledged that it wasn't big enough, not even close, and that the recovery that followed was too slow, too uneven, and continued a lot of pain for a lot of people. So I got to say, when I read that op-ed yesterday, I was kind of blown away by it, given that, as Gene said, Larry has kind of moved away from that idea of fiscal restraint in the face of crisis and been much more progressive in his willingness to use deficits and to spend whatever it takes. And everybody is talking about lessons learned from 0809. And the biggest lesson was, you really can't go too big. You have to go shock and awe. And particularly now, as Gene says, there are so many people suffering. There's such a need for expanded unemployment insurance, these $1,400 checks, and to fight the pandemic with every dollar and cent that we possibly can. Because there's only one thing that's going to make this economy crank again and get jobs moving again, and that is beating the virus. So throw all the money you can at it and then, help people who are suffering right now. So to have Larry say that, it's not that he makes no decent points. There's questions about, does this crowd out other parts of the agenda? Is there inflation lurking out there somewhere? They're not completely, ridiculous points to make, but they fly in the face of our experience from 08, 09. And they're somewhat shocking coming from someone who's made the counter argument over recent months.
Well, Gene, I wonder, given that the Biden White House is trying to go big on this and they're embracing more of the policy of someone like Bernie Sanders than Larry Summers, does that signal that this White House is going to shift toward more of the progressive wing of the party when it comes to economic strategy going forward?
I had the honor of not only working with Joe Biden for so many years in the Obama White House, but working with him during the campaign and being part of discussions with him as the crisis hit. And I think the way President Biden looks at things is, he's not engaging in some philosophical battle. He's thinking about people who are hurting, and I know that one of the things that was really on his mind when he was first dealing with this was he'd seen the pain of long-term unemployment. He'd seen the pain of eviction. He'd seen the pain of young people coming into the labor market and being scarred by a weak labor market and not getting their earnings up. And I think what that says to him is that there is real human suffering that is long term when you don't get to not just get to full employment, but how fast you get to full employment. The faster you get, the less human beings suffer, the less parents are, as he says, taking that long walk up the stairs to tell their kids they've lost their job. He really feels it in his heart. And I think that he has seen that the overwhelming amount of people, including the last, I believe, 3 Fed chairs, Ben Bernanke, Jerome Powell, and Janet Yellen, have all said, this is the time to go big. Don't take a chance. Don't get a chance of getting stuck in the mud because the risks are too high. And when you're doing policy, you have uncertainty. You have to decide what risk are you going to take in an uncertain world. And Joe Biden is making the right decision. He's not taking the risk that things go wrong, that the hole's deeper, and that people suffer. He'll take a risk that things are going great. And, you know, if it was a little bit too larger than someone thinks it needs, well, with negative real interest rates and very little signs of inflation, I mean, that's a choice he's taking easily. It's from his head, but it's also from his heart.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.